I have my own favorite list of quotes from the Dalai Lama works. They overlap substantially with what Eva showed. I was surprised how much we paid attention to the same topics. I selected only one of them, which was cited by Eva as well. Given the highly subjective nature of our experience of consciousness, is a scientific understanding in the sense of an objective third-person account ever possible? Scientific understanding. We have a model of this in science, at least in physics, which is, of course, a third person. Einstein said, when we say that we understand a group of natural phenomena and we think of consciousness as a natural phenomena, we mean that we have found a constructive theory which embraces them. And even more, he insisted in a number of places how this constructive theory should function. We want the observed facts, empirical facts, to follow logically from our concept of reality, from our theory. This is, to me, the thing that we are missing and without which we will not have a scientific understanding of consciousness, however many empirical studies and discussions we will have in the future. I tried to formulate such a theory 11 years ago, and it is called hypernetwork brain theory. You can see that it is about brain. Actually, it's not only about brain. It doesn't start from the problem of consciousness itself. It claims that consciousness is not the right entering point for the science of consciousness. The mind is. There is no use of making this claim if consciousness and mind are synonyms. But in theory, they are different. So theory says that before trying to develop a scientific theory of consciousness, we must have a scientific theory of mind. Why? Because according to theory, these are two very different things. Mind in this theory is treated as a structure, and consciousness as a specific process within this structure. So no structure, no process. So this is one of the things in which theory differs from many modern theories of consciousness. It starts from a different place. It also, to continue, addresses the hard problem only after addressing the main problem. And the main problem, according to the theory, is a mind-brain problem. So we have to solve this problem first, and then the problem of consciousness and brain. Another unusual moment in the theory, that in trying to solve the mind-brain problem, it does this not through giving a new understanding or concept of mind, but giving a new theory of the brain. It claims that we do not know presently the real nature of the brain. I might quote Antonio Damasio in this respect, with whom I agree, but I think that many experts in this audience will have their own understanding of this ignorance. So it is a brain theory. In a nutshell, the theory says that the organism as a cognitive biological system consists of cognitively specialized elements. That's an important point. These elements are concentrated in the brain and form a cognitive organ of the body, which in the theory is called cognitum. The cognitum has specific structure and cause-effect power. So two moments, structure and cause-effect power, properties and structure. mathematically approximated by the concept of neural hypernetwork, developed earlier in the topological algebra and geometry. The mind, according to the theory, in its most useful understanding, is identical to this higher order structure of the brain and its specific causal properties. I will return to this because Nick mentioned the identity theory. This is not the identity theory which is traditionally understood. And finally, whenever the system has cognitum, an organism has cognitum, it constitutes its maximal level of existence, not only of the brain, but of the organism. So it is a maximal power which produces the existence of this organism in its relation with the outside world. I do not have time to go into the details. The theory consists of 3 phases, 3 stages. Conceptual one, mathematical formal, which is a neural hypernetwork theory, and neurobiological, which enriches the conceptual and mathematical with the neurobiological details. I will say a few words just about the conceptual part. According to theory, the cognitive elements in the brain can be divided into 2 type of specific elements, which are called cognitive groups or cogs and links of cogs. The term cog has a double meaning in theory. In English, it is a subordinate but integral part of the whole system, and in theory, it is a unit of qualitatively specific experience, a separate element in this mental system. And another thing, which is abbreviation, it is also a neural cognitive group, and abbreviation is cognitive group, whose activity sustain this specific experience. So it is a sort of a dual. At the bottom, it contains physiological neuronal elements, but together in their cooperative activity, they start to have a new cause-effect power, the new knowledge for the organism, which is a poor view of the world at the ability to cause the activity of this group of neurons or this cognitive element with a qualitative specificity. And whenever this element is active, the effect of its activity changes the probability of interaction of the whole organism with the world. So it has retrospective and prospective knowledge. The term log, links of cogs, reflects a specific feature of the connections in the hypernetwork. These are not network connections. So the connections in the networks are between nodes, neurons, and axons which connect them. In the hypernetwork, the 2 cones and their top level of their cause-effect power are connected through intersection and overlay on the similar neuronal elements. So the link between different cogs is also neuron. You can destroy a link not by cutting the connection, the pathway, but killing the neuron. Or you can activate the link from one group by the fact that it belongs to the second group, and it will increase the probability of retrieval and activation of the second group. In a sense, what I showed on the previous slide as the causes and effects on the cognitive level are kind of a light cone in physics, a region of space-time that encompasses everything with which a given observer, in this case a signal cognitive element, can have a causal relations at t-1 or t+1 time. And the whole cognitum is a sort of a causal diamond. That means that the system of these connected elements can carry the experience of the particular organism, phylogenetic and individual, and can have the possibility to project to part of the universe with which this system was or is connected in the past and in the future. Carl Friston formalized it in a slightly different manner using the term Markov blanket, but it is about the same. Now, that was a very brief summary of the theory, but an important thing about which I wanted to talk today is that the theory does not postulate these statements. It derives them, it infers them from the first principles, first biological principles. And in a sense, it is a completion or attempt to complete the Darwin's program. The program of the second half of his life, when, as Samuel Butler critically wrote in Evolution Old and New, that Darwin has blew out the mind from the universe. So what he was trying to do is to return it back according to the natural principles of natural selection. And this point that Darwin had this program and that he didn't complete it was made by Gerald Edelman, who wrote explicitly that the task of modern neuroscience is to put back mind into the nature by completing the Darwin's program. And he tried to achieve this in his 3 monographs, one on the theory of neuronal group selection, another on the developmental principles of how organism and brain develops, and the final one applying these theories to the problem of biological basis of consciousness. But our approach has been due to the traditions which we had in our country and the Russian neurophysiological schools. The early attempt to build such an approach was done in 1863 by Russian physiologist Ivan Sechenov, who was a brilliant physiologist himself. He experimentalist, he discovered the central inhibition in the central nervous system, and he discovered plasticity. He discovered the effect of summation. But in his theoretical interest, he was very interested in the problem of mind and brain and solving it in physiological terms. And you can see here one of his works, Who and How Who Should Develop Psychology. His earlier work was called An Attempt to Introduce Physiological Foundations into Mental Processes. The points you can see here are very close and very resembling of what we are trying to do now. Sechenov was the editor of the translation of The Origin of Species, and he himself translated both the descent of man and the expression of emotions in the animals, in humans and animals. So his points were that we should study consciousness in its origin, including evolutionary. We should start from animal consciousness. We have to look for a neural basis of consciousness, and we should focus on the model of elementary mental and conscious behavioral acts to dissect it. Of course, Pavlov followed this strategy. He was inspired by Sechenov's book. And his goal was also to understand how the matter of the brain gives rise to subjective phenomena. His theory was the theory of identity. He suggested in many places that the fact of association represents a fundamental case, a moment of contact, or rather. So Pavlov saw the identity between the conditioned reflex and the psychological idea of association, and he thought that it is possible to build scientific understanding of subjective experience by this procession of these stages of identity correlations. Now, this slide shows what happened very specific then in Russian neuroscience. These great scientists, Sechenov, Bekhterev, whom I didn't mention, Pavlov, they all started studying the mental properties of the brain and consciousness, and using the mind-brain identity theory. But in 1920s, a very unusual thing occurred due to revolution in Russia and spread of Marxism. Marxism came to Russia in forms of historical and dialectic materialism. Dialectic materialism was proposed not by Marx, but by Engels, or them together, and it was a parallel track of what in Britain was developing at the end of the 19th century as emergentism, so emergent materialism. Two young scientists at that time combined these traditions of studying the higher brain functions and philosophy of dialectical and historical materialism to come with their new or different idea of how to relate them. One of them was P.K. Anokhin, and he was a student of Pavlov. He worked in Pavlov laboratory. And he wrote an article, Dialectical Materialism and the Problem of Mind, giving a suggestion of how the new emergent properties might appear as a function of the nervous system, and how it is necessary specifically to look what are these properties not reducible just to physiological processes of elementary excitation or inhibition. So that was an attempt to bridge physiology and psychology. In an absolutely similar logical manner, another young man, Lev Vygotsky, suggested that this bridge can be built also between psychology and culture, social psychology, in his work, The Historical Meaning of Psychological Crisis. And that meant that instead of identity theory, they said that mind and brain are not identical, but mind can be treated as identical to higher level organization of the brain and processes there, which have their own specificity. Out of this, and students of Vygotsky, Alexander Luria and Alexei Leontiev, the schools of Soviet neuroscience and psychology developed starting from 1920s, 1930s in Russia. I can summarize this approach not using the term dialectical materialism, which had different connotations, but introducing a new term. I suggest that the main findings or ideas behind that approach can be summed up as a deep macro realism. Macro means that n+1 level is different from micro N level because it has different structural and organizational properties. Also, macro N+1 level is real in the sense that it has cause-effect powers different from micro level. And the third and very important and not always mentioned part of this philosophy or methodology is termed deep. That macro is deep because micro level in macro system is transformed and carries new cause-effect properties at micro level, so that new level do not appear as overlayer on top of the existing level. All the lower levels are becoming different. DNA is not simply chemistry, it's different chemistry. Proteins are not simply chemistry. One of the students of P.K. Anokhin, an outstanding neurophysiologist, he was a genius, Vyacheslav Shverkov, started in 60s and 70s to study using these approaches the functional systems, the ideas which were put forward in the functional systems theory, using single-cell recording in freely behaving animals. And the main three findings, which is summarized here from many of these experiments, that they found that the activity of neurons in the waking brain is specialized in relation to certain functional systems. That means elements of subjective experience acquired in the individual life. Neurons of many brain structures are simultaneously involved in functional systems. They recorded from different places, from micromoleculators, and showing that is synchronized from not only between the cortical areas, but cortical and subcortical areas. And also an important moment that in the waking brain, neurons exhibit anticipatory activity. That means it is determined not by stimuli from outside, but by the goals and intentions which are retrieved from animal memory. Just to have an illustration of this, it's one of the experiments in Shverkov laboratory where a rabbit is trained to press the pedal to obtain food in one feeder. There is a second also lever which is connected to another feeder. And here you can see the recordings of neurons. And these are recordings from a number of neurons in these animals. So this is the raster of the activity. Each vertical line is a spike of a neuron, and here is a histogram of cumulative histogram. This neuron is active both on the left side and on the right side. When this rabbit performs another type of operant behavior, also learned in this cage, when it pulls a ring in order to move and to provide carrot. So you can see that this neuron is active independent on which side. And of course, this ring is a completely new thing which was never met before by the rabbit in his previous life. Another neuron shows the following. It is active only when the rabbit is pulling the left ring. Then if the behavior is switched so that ring is removed and it is necessary to press the pedal, there is no activity. That means that it is not any mean to obtain food produces this functional systems activity. But when the ring is removed, it starts to be active again. And on the other side, on the right side, this neuron shows no activity at all. That means that this neuron is specific only to the left ring, which is discriminated by animal. And here is the opposite example. This is the neuron which is active only when a rabbit is pressing the pedal but not pulling the ring, and only on the right side. Other neurons, for example here, are active when the animal is pressing both pedal or pulling the ring, but only on the left side. So there is a whole spectrum of individually specialized neurons. You can see that they are related to goal-directed activity. That means that obtaining the result terminates the activity, and their activity grows closer to performance of this act and obtaining the result. So what Shverkov concluded from there is very important to the study of subjective experience by third-person objective means, the question raised by His Holiness. The main scientific event that made writing this book possible was the establishment of the fact that nerve cells in different areas of the brain are specialized not in relation to any processes or functions, but in relation to elements of subjective experience. The study of neuronal specialization thus becomes an objective method for studying the structure of the subjective world, and the analysis of the activity of nerve cells with a known specialization becomes an objective method for studying its dynamics. This solution opens up the possibility of studying the mind, that is, the composition and relationship of the elements of the subjective experience of animals, by objective physiological methods. That means looking into the brain, we can, and recording neurons in the conscious active animals, we can find out what is their experience about the world and how it is shaped in what elements and what is important for them in this world. We are doing now this type of research with optical recordings in mice with the specific genetically encoded optical sensors. And you can see that here, for example, mouse is exploring novel environment. Each color shows when the neuron is active. And here you can see two neurons which are active in a particular part of this maze. Whenever the animal, this is a circular movement during 15 minutes from the center. Whenever the animal is crossing this particular place, this neuron starts to fire. Importantly, this happens very rapidly. In many cases from the first visit to this place, and stays for a long time, for example, for 3 days. So, returning back to the problem of how the hypernetwork brain theory addresses the emergence of mind and consciousness. There are two more specific moments here in the theory. One is that it addresses the emergence problem not during evolution, but during individual development. It says, we have a huge amount of data of how mind and consciousness emerges because it happens in each newborn baby or newborn animal. From nothingness to somethingness during individual development. And though it is very difficult for us to study evolution, besides comparative methods, here we can ask the question, how from nothingness to somethingness in each case happens so precisely and without much mistakes. What are the rules? And second specific moment, that within the individual development, it addresses the emergence problem during learning, that is experience-dependent stage of development, but not during embryonic development. The theory has two other parts. What happens, which sets the conditions for learning during individual development. This has been subject of about 80 years studies in the School of Functional Systems. It was called systemogenesis. and addresses the evolutionary question, but in terms of staging, it starts from learning. And what it suggests is that three simple conditions, each independent, if combined together, are necessary and sufficient for the organism to develop the mental properties and finally consciousness. One is generative functional systems. That means combinations of the activity of the organism elements, central and peripheral, which achieve a particular relation of the organism with the environment, adaptive or misadaptive it can be, but generative functional systems means that when such functional systems, the repertoire of such functional systems, they are meeting the mismatch, the activity of organism starts to generate new trials, which can solve this problem in a different way. Through, for example, what is classically known operator or instrumental learning. And the tree of these functional systems grows. So it's an individual experience, different for different individuals, and which finally makes all the learning-dependent individuals so different. Second, it suggests that in order for the mind to arise, it has to be located, the organism has to have deep integrative network. What does it mean? If the network is shallow, there are no deep layers on which the convergence of different stimuli can generate different qualitative inputs with the different levels of abstraction. The deeper this integrative, global integrative network, the more neurons in the middle of this network will be able to represent various abstract properties of relation of the whole organism with the environment within particular functional systems during behavior. And the third condition is cellular associative memory, long-term memory. This is what I have been studying from 1980s, looking for the genetic and epigenetic changes. And the idea, our initial discovery in 80s was that there are genes, immediately genes, that are turned on in the brain during learning. And initially I thought that it is a single event in the neuronal life. It is very specific and happens only rarely. But obviously, accumulating data from our research and other groups shows that neuron can enter many steps of differentiation, each time bringing convergence of different properties to its cellular state. So it can finally achieve very abstract relations with the presynaptic inputs or outputs and with the probabilities of what is represented in the world. And the theory says that as in Darwinian mechanisms, the components which are independent, if they meet together, they can form an algorithm, simple algorithm, which if repeated many times over millions of years in many generations, can produce a variety of complex organisms. Then if the organism is appended with such minimal upgrade to the Darwinian principles as suggested by hypernetwork brain theory and can be tested experimentally, then it is the idea of the same algorithm, that many cycles of this algorithm being accumulated not through genetic but through epigenetic individual memory in the course of individual development can give a result to explanation of the main targets of Darwinian theory in evolutionary scale, that is a complex design which you cannot achieve by a single jump but has to have the work of algorithm for many cycles, and great diversity, in this case, diversity of different minds. Thank you.